Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, great. Okay, so here we are. Okay, okay. So we have dear all, let me welcome you. Raman.
Hello.
See you. Hello. Good evening, everyone. Glad to see you. Today we're continuing with our presentations. Thank you to those who are with their camera on for me to see you. Maria, Roman, Elizaveta, I see that you're gonna be first. Okay, and Yulia here, very nice. Matthew, are you with us only for research, for knowledge management course, or?
Yes.
But today we have a research seminar course. So it's not knowledge management. I teach 2 courses this module, and it's different one.
Okay,
I'm
makes
sure
sense.
you should be here with us. I'm glad, of course, but it's up to you to decide.
Okay. No, I was confused because you sent me the mail and I wasn't sure about that.
So
Okay.
no. Knowledge management next week lecture.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, bye.
Bye. I have mixed feelings about presentations of the first group. There are some good presentations. There are some not very good presentations. That's why I would ask you to show me your conceptual model in case you have quantitative research, or to show me your logic on what you're gonna proceed with your qualitative, for instance, data or mixed methods data. Because in some presentations, I haven't seen the research question, then how it is, how you tackle these research questions in terms of your research design, and then what data, how you measure them, how you operationalize them, and what data analysis methods you use in order to get the results. In this case, I do consider that you haven't presented any methodology, because at the methodology section presentation, it is already assumed that you know how you're gonna work on your topic, what you're gonna get in the end. And if you say, well, I have exploratory research, I do not know what my data are gonna show me, this is not sounds sound and well established even for quantitative exploratory research. So in this way, please do pay attention to this important evaluation criteria, that you do have the model, and if you have it, especially for explanatory research, you know how to show it. For instance, in the first presentation by Maria, Roman, and Elizaveta, the formulation of the heading does not necessarily explains or shows the potential, even hypothesized model. In contrast, for instance, to the first presentation in another group by Sofia Smirnova, the impact of the dark triad on personality for the formation of entrepreneurial intentions. Here, also we had another presentations that have the impact of something on something, well, very clear, straightforward conceptual model, then how we measure our dependent variables, and then how we proceed with data analysis. The same for Yulia, Zahir, Jawad, the same for Ahmar. For Monica, influence of marketing strategies on consumer behavior and sustainable consumption. Okay, for the influence, clear, but for independent and dependent variables, are not clear. For Neil, Niken, and Botho about the correlation between career expectations, I'm just looking at my notes, and commitment, kind of clear, but you use correlation, and it is interesting how you're going to proceed. Is it going to be impact or just correlation? And if it's just correlation, the question would be, so what? What solutions you're going to proceed. For the next group, for the next presentations for April 27th, I see here Khan, Darren, and I do not see Eva here. Okay, application of psychographics using artificial intelligence for customer segmentation. Also not that clear with conceptual model what you're going to do there. So why I'm just talking about these things, because these are, well, for you to consider how people who haven't seen your work in progress before could react to that, and what you need to stress in your presentations. I also shared with you, for us to be on the same side here, the following presentation, the example presentation from previous year, for you to understand how it looks like in general, and also to how it might look like in terms of presenting their motivation part, introductory part, and methodology. Apart from how the whole presentation could look like, including, well, outline of the presentation, slide numbering, research background, important citations. Your research is not like creative work. You based your research and justify all your solutions you make. This is a nice slide. Please pay attention how you could structure and present the research gap, saying that yes, indeed, there is something unknown in my topic, and I can use and do this topic not just because I like it or it is in my interest or a professional experience, but yes, there is an objective need for that. For some papers, it's not that necessarily. Contradictory research findings, especially with regard to psychologist competences. This is for the topic specifically. They analyze demand for psychologists and their characteristics and how they impact the price and, well, the demand itself. And they cite, well, necessary references showing that, yes, there are different contradictions. Contradiction is one of the major ways on how you back up and show your research gap. Okay, some found positive impact, some found negative impact, some researchers haven't found anything. And you say that, and it would be even better if they say, okay, positive, negative, no impact at all. Country-specific studies, some, it's a weak argument, but still, sample university school students, university school and school students for such topic are not, of course, very good respondents, right? They also measure that. In brackets, say, if you ask what was the procedure in their literature review, they have taken 40 most relevant papers on the topic, and they analyzed with these papers from the point of view of methodology settings in general, and they found out that, well, the majority used the survey as the data collection, so only primary data. That's why they say, okay, survey, everyone uses, and we're going to use secondary data. That's like the contribution here to methodological backup this discussion on this particular topic. For independent variable, this is important. Everyone used the psychological demand for psychologists, like how many people turn to a particular counselor. We're going to use the price as the outcome indicator. No one did that, we're going to do that. And this is like, this should be the first. And in your case also, remember we were saying that best practices impacting performance. Okay, if they did that in America, you are doing that in Zambia, Ghana, China, Russia. No one actually cares about that, and this is a weak argument. In case there is something in the context of these particular countries that could add value to the general theory. Okay, so independent variable, adding some new variables is a good one. And well, And that's it. Research goal and research questions 2, straightforward research questions. How descriptive attributes or attributes of psychologist profile affect counseling price, counseling demand. Okay, in what way do they impact or how do they impact? And we assume that there are going to be several attributes. Some of them would impact, some of them would not. Okay, we could operationalize these attributes, we could operationalize price, then we run our regression. Since they use secondary data, they have exploratory confirmatory factor analysis, right? In order to have a smaller number of variables, they regress these indicators onto their outcome indicators. Voila, you have everything. That's very straightforward approach. If you do not have that straightforward approach, there are going to be questions. Although you might have exploratory research, but for exploratory research, as far as I consider, no one particularly has this kind. If you have, well, we're going to discuss your particular case. This is research type of work, meaning it's not practice oriented. Some of what I see are more consulting project formats, but from what I know, no one has consulting project approved as their final midterm paper. So we need to have theoretical contribution. That's why I signed the paper on theoretical contribution, for us to be on the same side, what is theory and what theory is not. This relates to topics that discuss different models and how they could be applied in different settings. That's not a research, that's more a consulting practice-oriented project. Okay, theoretical background. Then here they provide their conceptual model. Conceptual model includes their factors. They call it, well, psychology profile factors, agency factors. They name these factors, 4 of them. They cite where they have taken them. And then they provide very straightforward conceptual model. I would ask you to have some kind of conceptual model for explanatory quantitative type of research. For other type of research, it wouldn't be conceptual model, but it could be logical diagram, for instance, or scheme describing the logic of your research. In this case, well, very good way to present your research. So they presented that they already showed hypothesis, but they also formulated hypothesis on a separate slide just to know what are there. Then someone asked me, what is operationalization of variables? This is it. This is on this slide. You could see this operationalization where you have 4 independent variables. For each independent variables, they have specific items, and each item is measured as proxies of secondary data. For example, education of a psychology consultant measured as number of universities where they had been studying, or experience measured as on the website, on the particular platform, as number of years, or research publications, number of publications, and so on. All of these items could be measured in a variety of different ways, right? So you need to show how do you measure these items. Then control variables, then data collection, how they collected the data, the source of data, total number of observations, the platform, what data have you parsed, for example, if it's secondary data, short description of your data, male, female, average age, most populous city, average price, demand. So some kind of a portrait of your data. Of course, you're gonna, well, assume that you provide descriptive statistics of your data if you have them showing what do you have. It's a good idea to include, if you parse, for instance, data, illustrations. What exactly, this is the page, what exactly do you take in order to show this data collection procedure? Because someone asks what should be there in this data collection procedures. Okay, parse data, 24 variables that they had, that they used as as the source for their analysis. Okay, web scraping and parsing data. Some of you are using very intensive data collection procedures where you collect data manually or you write specific code. And this is a huge individual contribution within your work. Please show that. Please indicate, you could even say, okay, we've done a great work getting our data. If your data were provided by your supervisor, I guess no need to say that this is not that, well, serious contribution in contrast to those who collected their data. And well, this is obvious your strength if you did so. If you have a complex data analysis procedure or research procedure in general, for instance, mixed methods research, please illustrate it. Like guys did on their data analysis scheme. They passed the data, prepared the data, transformed the data, run confirmatory exploratory analysis, factor analysis. They had the final linear regression models. Then the results that they got several types of analysis indicated, and this is a good way, color coding your outcomes, your procedure, for instance, and this is like a traditional way in regression output presentation, that you have this output, that you have significance coefficients, that you have your adjusted R quadrant indicators, and so on, and then you color code and visualize what do you have. This is a good way of presentation. In the discussion section, you go back to your research questions and hypothesis and just show, okay, what you got, what was proved, what you didn't have an opportunity to prove, and then how it contradicts or in line with previous studies. For instance, so these ones all contradict in red, but with some they are in line. And then you discuss these results, then you give your practical implications. They did general practical implications, and specifically for each indicator, limitations, recommendations, additional recommendations, references, and additional slides. Committee members, especially those who are into statistical procedures, and usually you do not have that much time in order to describe them, they're gonna ask you, may ask you about specific procedures. It is a good way to have an additional slides, everything that is not in the main presentation, with data, well, descriptive statistics, some visualization of your data, factor analysis, and so on. Please put plus in chat if you have pretty much the same logic in your research. Please put in plus in chat if you think that your research is as straightforward and understandable as this example. Okay, Elizaveta, very nice. Roman, very nice. And you are the first, by the way, to present. Maria doubts, well, maybe it's your group decision to discuss it. Okay, in any case, let's start with Maria's, Elizaveta's, and Roman presentations. Just let me stop demonstrating, allow you to share your screen. 15 minutes. I'm gonna write my comments in the chat for you to later on to turn to them. Okay, 15 minutes, and let's begin.
Good evening. We would like to present the methodological part of our term paper. It is dedicated to understanding employer brand in the context of Russian IT companies on the basis of the data received from crowdsourcing platform. We will start with the short theoretical background for the topic. The first key notion that should be explained is employer branding. It is presented as a process of building employer brand, distinguishing the company from others on the labor market and shaping the uniqueness of employer brand and its offerings. These unique offerings, tangible or intangible, can be referred as employer value propositions or EVPs, which are the summaries of specific benefits promised to current or potential employees of the firm. According to the literature, through forming employer brand associations and encouraging employer brand loyalty, the employer branding increases employer attraction and employee productivity. That is why employer branding process is of high relevance among employers. For the basis of the research, we have chosen social media, particularly crowdsourcing job review platforms. A substantial paradigm explaining the relevance of social media is called signaling theory. It implies that a job seeker has little information about a potential employer and perceives data available on the earlier stages as signals, which results in employer attractiveness. Job review sites is one of the ways to deliver and share information regarding the employer's characteristics and work conditions. It can be concluded that these websites are among valuable information sources for job seekers, as they are platforms for public opinion sharing. For our research, we have chosen the Glassdoor as a source of data, as it is one of the popular platforms in Russia, and it is also claimed to be a worldwide leader in the number of available reviews. Our research goal is to explore the EVPs expressed by employees of Russian IT companies, in particular in their reviews published on Glassdoor platform. We have formulated two research questions for the purposes of our study. Firstly, we seek to find out what EVPs are the most critical for the Russian IT specialists. And secondly, we are going to identify to which extent these EVPs identified are sentimentally different.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, great. There are 6 hypotheses based on the previous studies we explored in the literature analysis. We expect that expressed by the employees of Russian IT companies in their reviews will coincide with the existing classification of 8 EVPs. As we are analyzing reviews from pre-COVID and COVID periods, we expect them to be statistically different in the number of reviews related to each EVP. We expect to observe the difference in the number of reviews by EVPs published by former and current employees of a company. In the analysis of reviews sentiments, we expect them to be different for pre- and COVID periods, as well as for current and former employee. Next slide, please.
So this is our methodology quadrant. As for research design, we decided that it will be exploratory study, but we're not really sure about it being qualitative or quantitative because we had many discussions about that. So after our presentation, when we will explain everything, we would really like to hear your opinion because we really doubt this one. But basically what we do in our study, we do content analysis of secondary data and text mining. The data collection is secondary data that we manually collected from Glassdoor, the reviews from Glassdoor. And data analysis techniques, we use topic modeling, sentiment analysis, chi-square test, t-test, ANOVA, and we will operationalize EVPs. Next slide, please. Here is our justification of the research design. So as the field of EVPs is not very explored, especially in IT industry and especially in Russia, there are not so many studies on it. So we decided that we need to understand this phenomenon to study it in detail. That is why we use exploratory study. And that is why we assume that it will be it is qualitative, because in the previous study of Kashivi and colleagues, they also did topic modeling and sentiment analysis, and they decided that it was a qualitative design. So that is why we hypothesized that our study will be qualitative as well. Second point is we decided to analyze secondary data because the data on employees' opinions about their companies is very hard to collect. And reviews give many insights, and also reviews were analyzed in several previous studies on the similar topic. And the third point is that we also wanted to find patterns in the reviews and some associations of employer value propositions with the characteristics of the reviewers. That is why we used the text mining techniques, which were also previously used by other researchers. And we decided to use tests like chi-square test, t-test, and NOVA that were not used previously. Next slide.
What about data collection? We have some selection criteria. Firstly, we need to be sure the companies we chose are founded by Russian entrepreneurs. Secondly, it is necessary that companies had to have headquarters in Russia. And one more technical criteria, the company had to have a sufficient number of employee reviews. Thus, we have 3 companies that are suitable for these conditions: Yandex, Kaspersky Lab, and Mail.ru Group. In totally, they have about 1,900 reviews. We received official permission from Glassdoor to collect this review data. As it was not allowed to parse the data from Glassdoor, we had to do it manually. Next slide, please. On this slide, you can see a sample of Glassdoor review. We collected such information as rating, status, employee, work experience, title, job title, date, and location. Pros, cons, and advice to management we combine in a single field as a text of such review. Next slide, please. On this slide, you can see the structure of the collected data set, types of variables, and description. Next slide, please.
There are some descriptive statistics for our data. The mean of the rating that reviewers assigned to these 3 companies is 4.26, which means that mainly employees tend to like their employers. Most of the reviews identify themselves as current rather than former workers. As for the type of employment, majority of reviewers stated that they are fully employed in a company. Additionally, there are some small shares of interns, contractors, freelancers, and temporary employees. Among those who indicated their work experience, 1/5 was employed in a company for less than 1 year, a third for more than 1 year, almost a quarter for more than 3 years, and for other durations the share is slightly decreasing. Over half of reviews were published before COVID-19 pandemic, and in their reviews, workers write about 37 words on average, while the range is from 6 to 435.
So before the analysis, we had to clean and prepare the collected textual data. So the steps you can see on the slide. So firstly, we cleaned it. We made all words lowercase, removed punctuation and numbers, deleted extra white spaces. Then we removed the stop words. We used the existing dictionary of stop words, which included pronouns, verbs like do and can, and other words which have little meaning without context. Then we tokenized and lemmatized our data, the definitions of these 2 techniques you can see on the slide. And then we transformed our data into DFM, which is document feature metrics. Next. And here are our data analysis steps. So firstly, we did topic modeling to identify the employer value propositions expressed in the reviews. And we used ANOVA to compare the proportions of words in reviews which belong to each of the EVPs. Then we did chi-square test to compare the distribution of EVPs before and during COVID pandemic, and also before former and current employees. Thirdly, we used sentiment analysis to understand which EVPs were positively or negatively evaluated by the workers. And we did ANOVA again to find the differences in the EVP sentiments. And finally, we did t-tests to compare the sentiments associated with each EVP before and during the pandemic and between former and current employees. Next slide.
The concept we are studying is the employer brand according to our research questions, which shows the employer's value proposition as a key element of this concept. An employer value proposition, or EVP, is defined as a summary of specific benefits promised to various target groups of employees. We choose this particular element of the employer brand as it allows us to find the relevant values of the Russian IT specialists through crowdsourcing platforms and fill in the gaps in this research area. There are 8 different EVPs that were discovered by other researchers. You can see all of them on the slide. Each value includes some elements or keywords which help us to identify and illustrate EVPs. For describing each value, we can ask some question. Social value is a fun place to work with talented people and great organizational culture. Interest value, this job is interesting, challenging, and achievable. Application value, is the work meaningful and invites application of knowledge and skills. Development value, do employees have opportunities for professional growth and advancement? Economic value, is work rewarded appropriately in the form of salaries, benefits, and perks? Management value, are managers good, honest leaders who inspires and respect employees? Work-life balance, are work arrangements flexible enough to achieve success on and off the job? Brand image, how the company's brand is perceived through the eyes of its employees. Using text analysis, we can analyze employee reviews to find out relevant employer value proposition for the Russian IT industry. Next slide, please.
So we haven't prepared preliminary results for the presentation. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, guys, thank you very much. You said that you manually collected text reviews, right? And how many have you had? 3 companies, and in general for each company?
In summary, there are something under 2,000 reviews we have collected.
Okay, I see now. Let's discuss your hypothesis. Your hypotheses are basically first your research questions and then hypothesis, because these are like parts that you kind of skipped very fast. Okay, what value propositions are more critical for the employees of Russian IT companies? How do you answer this question? Frequently they mention specific EVP. That's means the more important frequency of mentioning.
Kind of, yeah. Frequency, we do topic modeling, and it gives us the words which are associated with each topic, so with each EVP. And then there is a metric which calculates like the proportion of these words met in the reviews. So each word is related to the topic, and when we find this proportion of these words, so we can say like the proportion of this topic being mentioned in reviews, like something like that.
Like 30% for economic value. Okay, everyone wants higher salary.
Yeah.
Okay. To what extent are sentimentally different among employees? Among which employees whom you compare? This is my question about former and current employees. Sentimentally different, what do you mean?
We calculated sentiments for each EVP and just compared their mean values for each EVP. And we compared the values between current and former employees. And we also compared the reviews published before and during COVID-19.
So for each EVP, you have positive sentiments, negative sentiments evaluation. And we could say, okay, employees, for instance, if they have low salary, they are the most negatively reacting to that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then could you please switch to hypothesis? In the review will coincide with the existing classification of 8 EVPs. So based on your analysis, you could come up not with 8 EVPs, but less, for example.
Yeah.
No, but actually we came up with 7.
So it's already less.
Yeah.
Okay, number of reviews related to each obtained EVP published before the COVID pandemic will be statistically different. Do you have each hypothesis must be theoretically motivated, justified, right? I assume that for each hypothesis you have some kind of justification, right? Because it's very interesting why before and during COVID-19 there is going to be difference, because people are afraid to lose job and that's why they do not publish anything. Or how do you explain this hypothesis?
We have a blog about COVID-19 pandemic in our text, and we are going to discuss the relevance of this hypothesis based on the information provided there. We're still working on it, on the content of this text to make it more efficient and relevant.
But based on ideas, like what's the logic? Can you explain me the logic?
Sure. The way how people live and how they work, it has changed extensively after the COVID. There are a number of papers and articles about different aspects of people's lives, and also about their work. For example, some employees say that it will never be the same way of applying and being promoted for a job as before the COVID. And it's for sure is a challenge for most people.
So there were changes in this particular hypothesis. You expect that number of reviews gonna be higher before or after or during?
We just suppose that it will change. For example, before the COVID, many reviews could be about, like, I don't know, economic value, but after COVID, it will become less important and another value will become more important and it will be mentioned in the reviews more.
And they are going to be statistically justified using T or test or any non-parametric test. Okay. Number of reviews related to each obtained EVP published by current former employee. Current former employees, you're going to compare them, will be statistically significant. What does it mean? Who is going to publish more reviews?
It's not about the number of reviews in overall. It's about which EVPs the employees are more concerned. Which of
Current
them are more
and former.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, for sentiments clear and current former employees I had this question. Well, you have hypothesis, you have quantitative methods to analyze this hypothesis, you have initially qualitative textual data, but then which you later on quantify, right? And use numerical data in your analysis. That's why you have, well, quantitative research design, quantitative analysis based on secondary data. And this secondary data, well, there you have just transformations of them. Because, well, definitely you have hypotheses that you could run and then analyze using your, well, statistical methods. Before and during COVID, so how do you measure it? Because usually they ask it. There are different waves, right? So what's the time period, and what time period do you take like before the situation, like 2 years, or?
No, it was, yeah, it was 4th of April 2020, when the decree came into effect, the decree on measures to ensure the sanitary and epidemiological welfare of the population due to the spread of new coronavirus infection. It was,
so this is the start.
Yeah, this is the start of COVID pandemic in Russia for us. Like, we decided that it is.
And from that date, you take like 2 years, something, 1.5. And before that date, you also take 1.5. Equal number, and then
not really.
Yeah.
How?
Before the pandemic, we have taken all reviews available, because and we understand that it's not really sufficient for the analysis, but unfortunately there are very little reviews available for Russia. That's why we decided finally to take all we can, because otherwise we won't be able to receive any good results.
And as you can see, it was in the descriptive statistics, even the reviews, even when we took all the reviews before COVID and all reviews after COVID, the number was almost equal. It was like 60 and 40, yeah, before and during COVID.
Okay, yeah. One of the hypotheses, there were number of reviews for each EVP, but it's going to be share, I guess. Like share of reviews for each EVP.
It's a chi-square test. It takes the number of reviews, I believe it takes.
I mean that we're not that interested in the specific number of reviews for each EVP in before and during, because we are more looking at the well, what are the most important before and what are the most important during.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, great. Interesting. I would suggest that you pay more attention to hypothesis, because you skip that, but this is like the core idea, what you're doing there. Maybe to spend more time on that particular thing. It's interesting then to see the results and how you discuss these results, indeed, for sure. And well, and there are also some minor comments just for you also to see, maybe, well, to consider. Okay. Maria, Elizaveta, Roman. Yes.
Do you think we can say that our research is quantitative?
Yes.
Not mixed.
You use secondary data, which were initially textual, but then you quantified them and you run quantitative analysis.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being on time. Let's move on to the next presentation by Yulia. Yulia, are you here? I see that you are.
Yes, I'm here.
Please share your presentation. Factors influencing the increase in the attractiveness of sports disciplines for sponsors. The Russian case of figure skating. Have you seen my comments for your presentation?
Yes, and so I little change my topic.
Okay, very good, very good. Please start, 14 minutes.
After thinking about the research design study of the previous topic, factors influencing the increase in the attractiveness of sponsor disciplines for sponsors, the Russian case of figure skating, I saw about the need to adjust the topic since there could be problems with the data collection due to insufficient historical data for quantitative analysis. So I decided to look at other topics related to sports sponsorship, and also in particular I have studied previous researchers on topics of sponsorship, and I decided to focus on the topic of products matching in sports sponsorship, case of Russia figure skating. Why sport sponsorship? Because in Russia is developing, and for sport companies, disciplines and federations is a important part of financing, but in Russia is not developing like in foreign countries. So it's important to improve this in Russia. Why did I decide to focus on figure skating when researching that topic? Because of popularity of the sports discipline in Russia in previous year. Also, it's good case of different types of sponsors. For example, tea company, pay system, meat production company, bank, and other. So it's a good case for my research topic and questions. And why I decided to make research about match between brand products and sport discipline. I found previous research and studies, and they are dedicated consumer reaction on company's decision about sponsorship, metrics of success, effectiveness of sponsorship. So my research also will be correspond with these trends of research, so it will be useful for future research. And also in one of the research I found topics for future research, and it was related with product type of sponsors. My research problem, goal, and questions. The main research goal is to find out the importance of the brand products that sports sponsors advertise for the fan consumers. My research questions, should the sponsor brand products be associated with a sport discipline or sport in general? And the second one is, what categories of sponsors non-sport products cause negative emotions among consumers? My hypothesis, the first is when sponsors choose a sport discipline, championship team or sport team, do they consider or not factors related to product matching with sport, or they maybe choose factors related to popularity of the sport? The second one is, for fans consumers, the type of brand products that are advertised is important. The next is, fans consumers want to see only certain categories of brands in advertising integrations in sport. And the last one is, fans consumers do not want to see certain categories of brands in advertising integrations in sport. My research design will be mixed, quantitative and qualitative. In the first stage, I will be explore theoretical concepts on which criteria use companies sponsors when choose sport and organization or disciplines for finance. Also, I will try to find out if the study is that reveals the choice of sponsor in terms of the accordance connection of the sponsor's products with the sport discipline or sports in general. The next step was about making a list with figure sponsors of Russia figure skating. The next step will be creation and conduction of survey about associativity of sponsored brands and figure skating, importance of brand products matching, and also I would like to find out about what types of products can cause negative among fans consumers. The next step will be making conclusion about consumer perception of sponsors products in context of figure skating and in general. Also, I try to find out consumer attitude to unrelated sponsorship, for example, for products for non-sports products. And the next step after my survey conclusion, I will plan to conduct in-depth interview on which brands, product type, and why consumers would like to see from sports sponsors. This interview helped to make more deep conclusions about reasons why it's important and why consumers can have negative emotions about some sponsors. Now about data collection. The first step of data collection will be survey. My aim of conducting the survey is to understand is it important for people that is sponsored brand is associated with the sport with which it cooperates, and is it important for people what brand products are advertised in sports. So that's non-adequate types of questions. The first type of it's matching figure skating with 4 or 3 sponsors, which will be listed for respondents. Also, it will be question about selecting categories of products that consumers would like to see as sponsored promotion in figure skating and in general in sports and in general in other sports disciplines. Also, I would like to respondents select categories of products that consumers would not like to see as sponsored promotion of figure skating and in other sport disciplines. And also, respondents will evaluate on a scale the importance of matching or non-contradiction between the sponsor and the sport discipline. The next step will be in-depth interview. It will depend on results of survey and will be connected with importance of product matching or maybe not importance. So it will depend on the result of survey and confirmation of hypothesis. And the data analysis method which I plan to use in my research. The first one is descriptive analysis of respondent answers about their importance on brand products matching. The second one is comparison of brand that respondents choose as sponsors of figure skating and real sports sponsors in figure skating. And it will be interesting to find the correlation or maybe addiction between what is real and what respondents are feeling about sponsors and type of product sponsored. And the last one will be through grounded theory analysis. It will be done in results of depth interviews about perception of the brand products. And that's all I will consider today.
Okay, Yulia, thank you for the presentation. I left my comments. Let's make it like clear here. You have quantitative part and qualitative part. In quantitative part, you ask questions about that you made mentioned in your hypothesis, and then you illustrate or go further on these questions in well, qualitative part. Let's discuss hypothesis first. Hypotheses are only related and used for quantitative research. When sponsor chooses a sports discipline champion team, it considers not only factors related to popularity, but also the product matching with sports. This question is related to sponsors, but in your survey, if you are going to do survey, you were talking about fans or consumers in general. So if you're gonna ask only consumers, you have to focus on them. Well, this is important part. Unless you're gonna also include sponsors, but I guess we need to narrow down to consumers here. Do you have any conceptual model that illustrates like the general logic? Ideally, when we look at hypotheses, we could visualize them into a certain model, like HR practices are positively related, impact related to performance. Okay, HR practices, performance, drawing an arrow. In your case, for instance, hypothesis 2, for fan consumers, the type of brand products are advertised is important. How can we answer this hypothesis? How can you go about it?
Yes, there are some researches, but these researches may be more related to sponsor side. So it's important for me to find researchers are related to consumer sides, because I switch my topic, so I'm not so deep in this topic, but when I search some information in my previous topic, I have found that the conception of consumer choice metrics, consumer choice factors, sponsor choice factors, but not consumer. So I will deepen in the consumer side, and I try to find a connection with this hypothesis.
I guess this is important. Well, obviously, if you switch topics, then you need to go deeper into the conceptual model, because up to now, not clear. You're talking about factors that impact, or we could speak about consumers, associations, understanding, perception in general. right? And this perception we could measure somehow under different conditions, for example, when there is a good matching, when there is a bad matching, and then we could make up some assumptions. And then, for instance, we could measure these perceptions under a good match, bad match, and then we could say, okay, it is statistically different. We could say that, yes, indeed, this fit, right, product and sport, it matters for people. Maybe not. Maybe you could advertise on any sport where there are many people, like ice cream in winter or something like that. This is like we're talking about, right? There should be fit. We assume that there is going to be fit. I guess this is important that you go into consumer behavior theory and concepts that you are going to use so that you could, use them in order to run this survey. However, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds more like an experiment that you are going to conduct using, survey format. There is going to be ice skating sport, there are going to be different products. Please select one.
Yes.
Or there is going to be one good match, bad match. Please illustrate, measure how you feel about that. It is okay for you or not, like this, so perception items. And in this case, it's experiment that we're talking about here.
Maybe it might be more like experiment because I would like to get more results are related to consumer behavior, consumer perception. So it's more experiment rather than survey.
Yes. Well, if you have different conditions and you ask people under different conditions, like different matchings and so on, this is definitely experiment, right? We assume that their evaluations of their perception change because of what they see. So I think that this experiment thing and the theoretical basis, we need to develop more here. And based on these, like the general idea, then later on, there are going to be adjustments to your hypothesis and, research questions. Also, hypothesis part is only related to quantitative analysis experiments. You also mentioned qualitative part. I think that for qualitative part, it is also important that we allocate research question devoted to this particular qualitative part, right? So, for example, one research question would be related to the quantitative part with the hypothesis, and the second one to the qualitative part, because otherwise it would be the question, why do you need qualitative part? And also timing. If you're gonna do that, and then update the conceptual model thing, you do not have that much time. So please do think about that. Tadeo, right? Your research advisor.
Yes.
Okay. So have you scheduled meeting with him? Have you discussed it?
New topic, not because I have created this topic on these days, but in general about sports sponsorship and the figure skating case, yes, in earlier.
Okay, I think that it's a good idea to discuss with him new topic and how you're going to proceed with that one. Okay, also some comments in the chat, please do copy them and use them for discussion. Okay, Yulia, thank you. Good luck with your research. Let's move on. Zahir, Jawad, on loan football players, and I guess Tadeo is the same research advisor for guys. Yulia, maybe it's a good idea also to stay here with us. Zahir, I see that you are here. Jawad, yes. Please, you're
Hello,
welcome. Share
hello
the screen.
everyone. Let me share my screen first.
Uh-huh. Yes.
Can you see my screen?
Yes. Yes.
So, okay, our topic is about on-loan football players, determinants of playing time.
Zahir, excuse me, could you just click presentation mode within your presentation, view presentation?
Presentation mode.
It's like a view and then presentation.
Reading mode, offline, normal.
Or F5, as far as I remember.
Yeah, Alt F5.
F5.
Yes.
Please go.
What is just a small introduction that like what is football loan? Wait, I just want to minimize this so I can see the text. Like nowadays there are like increasing amount of loan transaction between teams, maybe because of their financial situation, and Bondital defines the loan transaction as a quasi-normative temporal transition whereby football clubs temporarily transfer playing talent to another club. This is just a simple presentation. Nowadays, it is becoming more and more important because more and more players are gets into the loan. There is for like methodology structure or quadrant, and we will discuss it in details in the following slides. We are going to use quantitative data method because we have numerical data, which is statistical analysis. The data was scrapped from soccerway.com between the years 2010 and 2020 from the top 3 European leagues. And we use for our data analysis inferential statistics or stepwise regression analysis. And our independent variables are age, nationality, position, lending and loaning club and leagues, foot height and weight. And dependent this foot height and weight, it will be just like our supportive variables, but not like the main variables. Independent variable will be like minutes played. For the research graph, the one thing that I want to mention is this area is not much research. I looked through a lot of papers, but there were not much research done in this area. And also Bonital also said this thing that despite the loan transaction becoming an integral part of competitive football, the demands players may experience on loan are truly not fully understood. So it means that in this area is not studied much. And another important thing is that we made a gap. I mean, we found a gap and made a theory out of it by ourselves. And we thought this area was not studied, and we think that is important to study. The main thing is that science, many football players or clubs, they have the expectation to get more skills in the host team. When they're getting in loan, the player or the parent club have the expectation so this player can learn more skill from the host club. So getting more skill is what the player or the parent club expects from this loan transaction. And also Stambola, he also claimed that a successful transaction is when an individual is able to cope with what an athlete wants to achieve during this transaction. So the athlete wants to get more skills out of this transaction. This is what the main goal of the athlete is. But with limited research undertaken on the loan transaction, it is not clear that whether time given to the loan player is in the host team is having linkage with their characteristics or not, or whether all players are given equal chance or are they differ by players' characteristics to play in the host team. What we mean in here is that we want to find out that not all players are given the same chance to play in the host team. Maybe it is it depends on their characteristics like age, their nationality, from which country they come, or their team, from which team they come, or their league, from which league they come. This may have effect on them to play in the host team, because playing more, it means that you get more skills. The research question is, the present paper aims to contribute to the existing literature by addressing the question of which parameters have the highest relative influence on the learned player being given a chance for playing, with a focus on a minutes played. So we are going to focus on a minutes played, because the more minutes you play, the more skills you gain. And this gaining skills is what learned players want. And our hypothesis is that players are discriminated based on their characteristics on the host team to be given a chance of playing for them. The research design and strategy is, in this research, I use a quantitative research strategy, because our data is numerical, and also quantitative studies in sport has been used for empirical analysis of match statistics in recent years. There are like some papers that they also use like quantitative analysis to measure the determinants, or the factors that affecting like salaries, their value, and all other stuff. So since we are also measuring a value, which is like their skills, and then again their skills is like having direct connection with their time played. So we are also using quantitative research and this stepwise analysis. Jawad, are you here?
Hello, yes.
Please explain your thoughts.
Everyone. So thank you, Ahmad. Since Ahmad said that our data analysis would be quantitative, so we try to focus to get data from the available sources. Our main source was soccerway.com, soccerways.com website. This soccerway.com website has, tracked all informations of every players, including in-loan and non-loan transaction players. So we only focused on the top 3 major European leagues, which from England, from Italy, and from Spain, Premier League, or in other words, Premier League, Serie A, and La Liga. The duration of for selection of our data is between 2010 and till 2020, or the year which are in right now. And since we are only focusing on the transactions which are done under the loan system, we only focused on the loan transaction. We didn't take into consideration the other types of transactions, for example, free move, or free or purchase, or buying or selling out. We only focused on the loan transactions. And next slide, please. And to our website is just to make sure that we have done, we are collecting accurate data. We were cross-checking this website with the transfer market, and as well as the websites of La Liga, and as well as the website of their specific players. So for the data analysis, we try to use inferential statistics, and as based our research, we found out that other prominent researchers in the same area have done the same, have used the same procedure. So for example, Rowley, Ravenel, and Bosen in 2017 used stepped valuation using multiple regression. Furthermore, Mincer in 1974 created a linear regression model to formulate a logarithmic function of the salaries in terms of individual, which is players in football, characteristics and enterprise characteristics. And the same procedure procedures are used by Lucifuna and Simon. They also used regression model to find out about the 4 variables, 4 characteristics. So we also decided to take advantage of this type of analysis. Next slide, please. If we come to operationalization or measurement of construct, we decided to, as I have already said, we decided to take minutes of play under our dependent variable, and independent variable is age, nationality, position, lending team, and lending league. And we are not the only people who, for example, consider age or nationality as independent variables. For example, in 2020, Musa Izidia has already, has already taken those 2 variables as independent. And for example, in Pires in 2007, noticed a premium for Latin American players in European Championship, and the idea of being that hiring Latin American players rising interest in their home continent, which is an example of nationality. So the independent variables we choose has been already used by the numerous researchers in this area. Next slide, please. So if we come to the last part of the presentation, so what would be the implication of this research? So what we can use it, this research, we can use it for the executive level professionals in football industry to maximize the structure of the system. And we can see that UEFA and FIFA FIFA policy can regulate around this loan system, and also application of economic network theory to the trading loan system in European League. So another major important implication would be around the systems trading, or in this research, we can call it loan system in European League. And this will also help player being loaned to better understanding of their situation in advance. For example, what would be their characteristics or dependent variables, independent variables that they might face during playing in the second team while transferring from first team. Furthermore, enhancing and understanding of the loan transition may better inform footballer clubs to better support players undertaking these transitions. And this is really, I think, important for the clubs who are right now trying to find out under which procedures they can transfer a good player from any teams in the world. It gives them a very clear picture of what they are gonna observe and what they are gonna take out of this process. Next slide. Yeah, thank you everyone. This was our presentation about football players who are being transferred under the loan systems.
Guys, thank you. Have you collected the data already?
Yes, Professor, we collected.
Not all, but we're still busy. It's not completed because it's like manual scrapping. That's why we don't have initial results yet.
So you're in the process now.
Yes.
Okay, do I understand correctly that there are gonna be how many approximately 100 or several hundred players, or how it works?
Thousands of players, maybe more than 1,000 players.
And for each player, you have age, nationality, position, landing, loaning club,
Yes.
foot height, weight, and other indicators.
Yeah, we have their characteristics because previously many other research like these, because it is hard for me like to name them, Swinstein et al. And many others use these characteristics for measuring the value of the players. But in here, like we think since he is in loan, he doesn't have like a monetary value, but his value should be like the more important or the more value we have in the host club, the more time will be given to him to play for their club. Because usually the players that are good players are given more time in the match to play. So we are just like trying to measure what characteristics have the effect on the players to be given more time on the host team. And I assume that their position, because there are like many German studies that already have done that shows that forwards have more chances to play for the host team. It is not on the loan system, it is on like on the buying system. So I assume it will also work for the loaner players, that forwards have more chance of being appeared in the football match. And I also assume that from the team or from the league where he has borrowed from, for example, like if he has borrowed it from a good league or a league which is much higher than the host league, he will also be given more chances because they think that this player is from a good team and we are going to give him more chance. He may be better for our team performance. So this is just like our hypothesis, and we didn't test it yet, and I'm sure we are going to have some results.
Zahir, could you show the hypothesis itself? Because players are discriminated based on their characteristics on the host team to be given chance of playing. Discriminated based on their characteristics in what way?
On the way, like I just explained, like if he is from a specific league or of a specific team, he may be given more chance of playing. More chance, we measure more chance by minutes played. He may be given more minutes to play, or he may be like discriminated on his nationality, because there is already a study that shows that players from Latin America, they are like given more chances in the matches and their value is higher. But we don't know this thing in the loan system. Those are measured on the monetary value, that when they buy players, they usually buy those players from the Latin America, let's say like Brazil, because players from Brazil they have like good reputation, I would say, because they perform well. So I guess like nationality also affects here. Like there are like also many players from Africa that are loaned, but they are like good performers.
I propose that you add a sub-hypothesis here with all these characteristics that you mentioned, because there is a list of these characteristics as far as I can see.
Yes. Now I noticed that I should have added like the list.
And in this case, it could be good to visualize this model, all these characteristics, minutes played, instead of like monetary evaluation. I see. Right now, I see, but before this discussion, this wasn't clear at all. And
yes, because
in your Zahira, just a moment. In your particular case, I think that you need to spend more time on preparing the audience to get the idea. Like you have 15 minutes for your presentation, and it is difficult to like get the main idea. I guess definitely we need to conceptual model to visualize what's going on there. To have sub-hypothesis, like meaning these are our independent variables, these are our dependent variables, and how these are how we think they are going to be connected. This is what is happening traditionally, and the main research endeavors are devoted to this particular thing, and we are going to explore this thing, and this is a new thing. No one did this before. I think that from the content part, everything is, well, good, but the form of presentation, this is what you need to really work on for the pre-defense. Because I think that for the person who hasn't heard this presentation before, this would be very difficult to perceive and understand what has been done. And obviously you did, well, good job collecting on this data and getting into the topic.
Yes,
Okay.
I just wanted to say something. Since this area is not much researched, this make it kind of hard to explain, because there is not a clear research gap from other studies that show that this gap needed to be studied in the future. But we have come up on this gap by ourselves, because we have found out that this area is not searched, and neither the clubs nor the players nor this football organization knows that what really affects their players to be going in the loan, and then they have like the chance to play for the host team. And it is important because they want to know that is it worth for us to loan this player to this club while he is having these nationalities. Maybe they will find out that yes, it is better if we give player from Brazil. They will have high chance of playing instead of
Zahir, I do not agree here that you cannot explain it clearly in the presentation. I believe in your abilities to present it clearly, even if there is no that much research on the topic. It's not about, I guess, the research, but the, well, very nice and clean idea that you translate, maybe with working definitions, maybe with, for instance, what I see, like you have maybe already to visualize initially the major scheme, that there are teams and you loan some players to this team, and this players' efficiency or value is measured as monetary terms. You switch to time elements, and then this time you think is going to be evaluated by some of these guy characteristics: age, nationality, team, and so on, and they impact this time in a different way, positively, negatively, and so on. And these are going to be your hypothesis. And for this hypothesis, you collect this number of data, and you use specific data analysis methods over here. And instead of time, you use monetary things. And this is what was already explored. And this wasn't explored, especially with the loan, football players. And in this regard, it is like much more clear what you're talking about.
Yes, I got it.
See?
Because I today I've just read the paper that you sent, like last night you sent the email that this name like me, Jawad, and there was some other students they should read what is theory is not a theory. And in that I found out that for a good theory you need to have a previous research gap and then explain it. Mm-hmm. And this is what like made my research like, and like I have to put more time trying to explain that why.
Yes, yes. Well,
but there was no time. That's why I just like made it something like this.
I heard your presentation and grasped the general idea. I think for the audience, you need to do this extra step for them to also understand it. And please use your presentation space and slides wisely. Please pay attention to, the previous presentation. Our first presentation is very complex, but still clear what they are doing. Or the example presentation, use illustrations, schemes in order to, translate the message that you want to say. It is important here. Okay, I have comments for you in the chat. Please refer to them, okay, and well, copy them and maybe to discuss with your research advisor. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. We are moving on to Monica.
Good day.
Good evening, Monica. Zahir, could you please stop demonstration screen and Monica could, so that Monica could start. Yes, Monica. Yeah, please.
There. Okay. Good day, everybody. Wait. There. I will talk about
Monica, before you start, in your research supervisor, it's good that you mentioned her. And DRL, please do not forget to mention your research advisors on your first slide. Monica, the middle name, Gennadievna, is in the middle. So Elena Gennadievna Serova.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
No problem. Please.
Okay, I will start. I will talk about the influence of marketing strategies on consumer behavior and sustainable consumption of goods in Russia. Okay, my research background, I will just talk it briefly. According to United Nations, responsible sustainable consumption and production, it's one of the goals of the Sustainable Development Goals. And its aim is to reduce the use of resources and degradation to improve the quality of life of people. Author Ottmans mentioned that consumers that have green products, that usually buy green products, is because they want to save money or they want to have a healthy lifestyle or just because they earn better. And also mentions that efficient products are achieving high volumes of sales. Another response theory of learning that the articles mentioned is based on the stimulus that green marketing and its elements such as price, green advertising, and green products point of purchase are like the stimuli in which consumers' purchase decision is the response. So an individual's action is a learning behavior which it shapes as a response after exposing to certain stimuli. The buyer decision process consists of 5 stages according to these authors, and are the need of recognition, information search, evaluation of alternatives, purchase decision, post-purchase behavior. So we conclude that depending on these authors, that sustainable consumption suggests that it's a practice of wise consumption habit in which individuals need to consider the post-consumption consequences for their environment. And it refers to the act of avoiding overindulgence in purchase and carefully use of goods and services that satisfies their basic needs. My research gap basically is to understanding of factors that influence green consumption in Russia for a better understanding. Also investigate the effect of how to understand consumers' behavior, that there's a gap related issue about the attitudes and the actual purchase behavior, and to create new theories about that to contribute more in that attitude behavior gap in which there's some contradictory views in that aspect. Also take into account elements such as personality and value orientation, social and environmental accountability and intention to purchase this type of goods, products. Also investigate customers' behavior from different ages, geographies, industries, products, and also subjective norms that may gain significance as green consumption trends expand. Subjective norms are all that social influences that influence the customer's behavior, but it's that way. It influences the customer's behavior because that way customers decide if they're approval or not. Theoretical background. According to these authors, they explain that green purchase behavior postulates that the intention is the main predictor of behavior, and that intention is influenced by their attitudes and subjective norms. While the intention is an indicator of performance, behavior is the actual transition of intention into action, and that willingness creates a gap between intention and actual behavior. And according to some authors, change attitude influence purchase intention and has a review, as I said before. So they conclude that it's a set of mixed behavioral intentions among green customers that poses a challenge to green manufacturers and marketers. Another field of like green marketing and green consumer behaviors is still unexplored. And also, as I said before, attitude behavior gap. There's a attitude behavior gap in which suggests that although individuals have a favorable attitude towards certain aspects, they do not necessarily practice it. There are some models like analytical models, consumer decision model, theory buyer behavior, and prescriptive models that explains the beliefs and feelings toward purchasing of an object and product or goods, and the consumer variety seeking behavior theory, innovation decision theory, and opinion seeker theory that also contribute in understanding how the customer's decision making and bridging that gap between their actual behavior. Here are some basic concepts. The research relevance methods that have been used: structural equationing, modeling, PLS, exploratory factor analysis, multiple regression analysis, path analysis, linearity, and more. The main approach to this topic in previous studies are, like, for example, the barriers that affect sustainable consumption, the values in sustainable consumption, also just focusing on millennial sector and how is their consumption, also sustainable consumption in emerging markets and how shifting those consumer behavior to more sustainable ones. Here is some literature review. The significance of this study. Practically, sustainable consumption has been considered a really relevant aspect in emerging markets. And due to Russia is an emerging market is one of them that makes this research really reliable. That is why obtaining research data will be very useful due that is a potential aspect and only prepared markets will capitalize it. Also, it will be really useful for green marketers so they can develop better strategies and understand the complexity of customers' behavior toward green purchase. Scientific significance is directing the existing research gaps, searching new independent variables, and conducting the research in a new national context in Russia. Research goal and research questions. The main purpose of this research is to examine the way the customer's behavior background impacts on the sustainable consumption and identify new factors that impact on customer behavior for sustainable consumption by determining their behavioral intentions and attitudes toward this type of consumption on goods in Russian market. The research question are, in what ways customers' background impact on sustainable consumption, and in what factors have an impact on customer behavior for sustainable consumption. Hypothesis: customers' background has a positive effect in customers' behavior in sustainable consumption. Marketing strategies make a positive impact on customers' behavior in sustainable consumption, and environmental characteristics make a positive impact on customers' behavior in sustainable consumption. There is a conceptual model in which talks about customer behavior as the dependent variable and the independent variables such as marketing strategies, environmental characteristics. My control variables are age, gender, income, and level of education. And there appears also the Latin variables for each variable, such as perception of Russian goods, if they are adapted to marketing strategies, consideration of promotions with price and place. And another from green purchase frequency, willingness to pay a premium price, green purchase satisfaction consideration. If they consider, they adopt a sustainable consumption behavior, perception, the range of availability of sustainable consumption goods, and if they have satisfaction, if they perceive that they receive like innovative goods. And the research design, I'm using quantitative methods because the research a cause and effect relationship and average trends and patterns. I'm using a line survey because it's the easy way to get responses to the circumstances, and survey contains 15 questions which help identify their background, their behavioral intentions and attitudes and environmental characteristics towards thermal consumption. I use the standard 5-point Likert scale, and the questionnaire design are based from the variables I'm using and the Latin variables, and it's like a brief from what I said from the conceptual model. The data collection, I'm using primary data, which is an online survey link directed to Google form that contains the survey questionnaire. And I use via VK, Telegram, and email, the time period from February 2022 to April 2022, total response 100 respondents, people living in Russia from ages less than 20 to 41 or more. And the scale, as I said before, I used the standard 5-point Likert scale. It's a brief overview of the primary data. Data analysis, I use descriptive statistics, the mean standard deviation frequency of data to provide basic information about the variables and identify the relationships between variables. And the PLS, the partially square structural equational model, often used for this type of research, management, and marketing, because it determines the impact of latent constructs considered because of its sample size and statistical power. Operationalization measurement, I use the standard 5-point Likert scale and then dependent and independent variables as I talked before, and that are my control variables. And the latent variables construct that I mentioned before. My reference, thank you.
Monica, have you collected the data already?
Yes, but I want to get more because the more response I get, it's better.
Do you have the questionnaire?
Yes.
Could you show the questionnaire? It's always a good idea to show like what's inside, or at least what scales have you used. You mentioned the customer strategies, marketing strategies, and the environmental characteristics. Could you at least show on slide this information? Strategies.
Okay. Yes, here, like for example, this one.
Yes, what do you mean under, okay, customer background? You ask them about age, gender, income level of education, environmental characteristics, consideration of promotions, price, place. How do you measure these variables?
Using Likert scale.
What question do you ask? Consideration of promotion.
For example, do you consider promotions when buying a good product? And the type of things, for example, consideration if they consider price and place, because that way it will be like, it will give like an idea from the context of, for example, economically speaking, because of the context that we're living right now. So that's
and what do you mean under place? Consideration of place, is it near home or far, or what?
No, I mean I'm talking in economically speaking, because it will give like an overview of how it's like economically the customer. I mean, that's why I use that.
Consideration of place.
Yes, a place of buying the product, because sometimes people decide to go to another place to buy because it's cheaper. And some
so
people
this place related to price, or?
Yeah, yes, so it's kind of, yes. Or because the place also offers something that the other place not.
And you ask whether you consider different stores while buying well, specific products. Or you use only one particular place, like that?
Yes, I just put, do you consider the place? I mean, when you go to buy a product?
In any way, it's a good idea to show questions, what specific questions that you ask for each variable. As for marketing strategies, maybe it's because of the naming, environmental characteristics and marketing characteristics. Environmental characteristics, these are more about different factors that people take into consideration while making their purchases, right? Yes. It's more about this. And marketing strategies. Is it, are these questions about their sustainable consumption?
Yes.
And their satisfaction with it? Could you show me the conceptual model then?
Okay. I think that maybe it's because of the naming, but I'm not sure. That's why I wanted to have a feedback from it.
So marketing strategies. Monica, can we say that it is more like this, that you have sustainable consumption that you measure in their frequency and other indicators, and on this sustainable consumption of individual people impact their background, like level of education, income, and all others that you measure, and specific factors, price, place, and so on, that impact their, well, sustainable consumption elements. And you want to understand whether these particular elements and these particular factors impact their dependent variable. This is our outcome variable. And there are going to be a group of independent variables here, and the second group of independent variables. Is it like this more?
I mean, what I have like this part of marketing strategies, how they impact customers' behavior, and from the environmental characteristics, how they impact this customer behavior, how these blocks affect this. I think that maybe it's like the name that I use for this variable. I'm not sure that's why.
Like now, right now, what you have is that green purchase frequency, green purchase satisfaction, and other, well, the naming definitely is different, should be. Like green consumption, for example, where you have marketing strategies, and well, other factors that they consider. Right now, according to the arrows that you have, they all impact individual characteristics. Obviously, this is not true. Can you just zoom out so that we could see the whole picture?
Yes, but
what you see right now is that they all impact customer behavior. And then you have a set of individual characteristics. Customer behavior, which is specifically green purchase behavior, sustainable consumption, or but then you have in marketing strategies, green purchase frequency, green purchase satisfaction. These are all related to their behavior. What's the difference? How do you measure customer behavior?
Is that I'm using like how all that from this side impacts this.
But how do you measure this customer behavior variable?
What this two? I don't care.
You have independent variables. You have dependent variable. Your dependent variable is well, green consumption, basically, or sustainable consumption, right?
Yes.
This sustainable consumption, on this sustainable consumption, there are different factors that impact it. First, marketing strategies, and second, first marketing strategies, environmental characteristics, and background characteristics of the individual. Right?
Yes.
So they all impact. But these like three groups from this side and from this side. Customer behavior as a variable, you also measure somehow. How do you measure it?
Maybe how about their perceptions?
Okay, Monica, like, let's make it, well, very, very clear about what I would ask you to do is really think about your conceptual model in terms of, well, your axis and your Y. How do you call it? From what I see, you have, well, this green consumption that you measure somehow with a set of questions. You have background characteristics of individual, you have their previous purchasing behavior, these price factors, place factors, and so on. And you have these marketing strategies, whatever they are. I guess that these marketing strategies might be your measures of this green consumption, but I'm not sure. But each variable should be operationalized with a set of questions. So please double check, what are these questions? What are these questions? How do you measure them? What are these questions for your outcome indicator? Because this is important. We cannot, right now identify it, but we need to think about this scheme, because up to now it is not clear what you are doing in the presentation, because conceptual model has a lot of items that you've already collected and measured somehow, but how do you measure them? And also, are these questions you have taken from previous studies, or have you developed them on your own?
Half and half. I mean, I made it by my own, but I just see what the other studies have made.
In this case, you have to really show that these particular questions I have taken from these particular studies, and these and others I have developed. And then when you're going to run your analysis, please do not forget about the reliability of your questions. You use structural equation modeling, you understand that there are going to be latent variables, and these latent variables are measured through several questions that you then sum up into one particular constant, this latent variable that you're in. But each of them has to be, measured, and they have to measure what you want them to measure. That's why these validity tests are important in your particular case. I also left comments for your presentation for a particular slide. Please pay attention to that. But up to now, I think we need to really think about the naming of these constructs. And also, these constructs that we have here on your conceptual model, they are ideally the consequence of the literature review that you have conducted. And in this literature review, they use different theoretical constructs that they explore, that relationships between them they explore. So please update your elements. If we are talking in your topic about sustainable consumption, then core variables in the conceptual model have to be related to consumption, sustainable consumption, have to be related to social demographic characteristics, have to be related to their consideration of price promotions, and so on, right? That is stated in the topic of your paper. Okay?
Yes.
Great. And have you discussed with Professor Serova your work in progress?
Yes, I always show her all the updates and she told me this.
Please discuss with her particular the conceptual model, because I think that there are some, really important things to improve in terms of understanding it. Okay?
Yes, I think that maybe it's the naming and to reorder some stuff.
Yes. Yep. Yep. Okay. Monica, thank you for your presentation. You can now quit the sharing, demonstrating the screen, and we are moving on to the next presentation by Neelank, Niken, and Oikanyeng. Career expectations, resilience, commitment.
Yeah, so I'm going to share my screen, and if you see it, just say yes, we can start.
Monica, please quit sharing the screen. Yep. And Neil, yes, we can see.
All right, Botho, you can start.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our presentation. My name is Oikanyeng, and I'll be presenting with my partners, Neelank and Niken. Our presentation topic is, as you can see, the correlation between management students' career expectations, resilience, and commitment in developing country, the case of Indonesia, India, and Botswana. And now moving next slide. On this slide, we can see the order of our presentation. Moving on. With regards to the gap, we realized that past studies have only focused on the same regions or areas and also looked into various study fields, but not management. Hence, we decided to concentrate on management students in particular. And now, following the gap identified, our objectives include looking into the main factors under study, looking into how rather the main factors under study are related, and also to determine to what degree these influence management students' career choices. Moving on to the next slide. After identifying our gap and goals, these are the research questions that we deduced. What do resilience and commitment play in management students' career plans in developing countries? And the second one, what is the relationship between students' career expectations and their demographics and educational attainment? Now, for our research design, conducting a survey was decidedly the best strategic choice for our research, hence we decided to go with it. Now let's look at the process in general. Our research design choice, as already mentioned, is quantitative, specifically correlational. Yes, correlational. We gathered primary data by sending questionnaires to our targeted respondents. And so also these are the methods of analysis that we used or are planning on using, seeing as we're not exactly done with our analysis. So we decided to do a reliability test, management of variance, confirmatory factor analysis, as well as comparison analysis, such as during the t-test. And as for operationalization, as can be observed from in this model, we have concepts that are to be explored. And as you can see, there's only one dependent variable, which is career expectations, and the rest are independent variables. And now I'll hand on over to my colleague, Neelank.
Hi, so talking about the conceptual framework, as you can see, we have on one side, dependent side, we have career expectation, and the independent variables, we have social demographic variables, human capital, and individual. We decide to divide career because we just didn't want to just use the vague term career expectation. So we divided them among two parts as career goals and career attitudes. And on the other side, we have individual variables like your personal commitment or personal resilience. I have marked the hypothesis. So basically the first one is how your career expectations are connected to your social demographics, because as we are doing, like we are targeting 3 countries. So it's a very like good area to explore. Then second one is how career expectation is connected to your level of education experience. So if I have to phrase it, it means like if, for example, I have high level of education or experience, does my career expectation change or do they remain the same? And again, according to regions. The third one is if I, for example, what is the relationship between commitment and resilience? If they both are high, how are my career expectations affected? If one is high and one is low, working on various combinations. Next slide is about we articulated those hypotheses. So as I said, the first one is career expectation aspects and variables of resilience, different management students in different regions. Second is people with high qualifications have greater aspirations for their careers. Third is career expectation aspects create a relation between personal commitment and resilient factors of a management student. Next one is the constructs. So as you can see, we have four major parts, four major variables. The first one is socioeconomic, then career goal attitudes, resilience, and commitment. And these are the, you can say, keywords or measures, how we're going to measure them. So for example, socioeconomic has parts income, occupation, education levels. And these statements are like example questions, what we asked in our questionnaire, because it's important to make people understand how we're going to articulate those questions. Again, career goal attitudes, we have leadership, expertise, and income level. I'm going to give an example, like for example, if I ask you, would you like to be a leader in your industry or the career you want to pursue? So that is how we're going to measure their attitudes and goals. Resilience, I remember you asked a question that if we use a scale or not. So yes, we use a scale from previous study, and I'm going to show it later and like in the last slide. And we took that scale from there. And in the commitment, we use Meyer and Allen, like we have the organization commitment model there. They have normative, continuous, and effective. So we use that scale in the commitment part. Next one, Niken, you can take away.
Okay. So in this part, we're gonna explain about our data collection. First, for techniques of collecting data, we use questionnaire for data collecting, and we share this questionnaire with online mode through Microsoft Forms to management students in India, Indonesia, and Botswana. And this data collecting method used to obtain data on career expectation, resilience, and commitment. Next slide. So this is our questionnaire. You can try to check our questionnaire by scanning this QR code. You can try it now. And the questionnaire scoring use a Likert. Can you turn back? Sorry. Okay. And the questionnaire scoring use a Likert scale. Like 1 means you strongly disagree with the statement, and 5 means you strongly agree with the statement. Next. Okay. So we have collected data from January to March, and we got a total of 650 data from respondents, and we got this data from bachelor and master students. And as we can see from the table, we got data from India 222, from Botswana 189, and Indonesia 244. And also we can see from the pie chart, we got the same percentage of data from female and male in this questionnaire. Next. Okay. So this is our relevant literature sources. We are looking for some previous researchers related to our topic that we can use as references to our research. And this is a table of several titles that related to our topic. And the green color is the paper that related to our variables. And the red one is not related. Next slide, Neil. Okay.
Yeah, so about the data analysis method, we have 4 steps which we want to use. We already have run the reliability test through SPSS program, and our chronic alpha comes above 0.8, which is I think a good number for it, which is acceptable value if I paraphrase it again. Regarding step 2 and 3, 4, both will talk.
Yes, as I think I've already mentioned before that we are indeed not done with the analysis, but we plan on doing the confirmatory factor analysis, comparison, and the variance. Thank you. And now moving on to the next one.
Yeah, last slide is about the scales. It's just an answer to your question you asked in the. So the 2 major scales we use, as I said, in commitment, we have Meyer and Allen, and in resilience, we use this as a reference, and they had a resilience scale, which is already created, and we just used the same. We didn't alter it, we didn't change it, just the same. Thank you. We are ready for questions.
You are very fast here, presented everything. Okay. I see like what you did. Let's have a look at the conceptual model and related hypothesis. For me, it wasn't that clear. Social demographic characteristics. When we're talking Maybe it's because of the form of visualization.
Yeah.
Arrows always mean impact, impact or influence. And from this presentation, I understood that you wanted to visualize this hypothesis one, where you have differences between countries, right? And it is like obviously difficult to do. But for second hypothesis and third hypothesis, I guess it was more clear. Could you show hypothesis?
Actually, I wanted
Yes.
to say about, you asked this question that why correlation and not impact. This was a question in your, and I wanted to answer that. Like impact shows like it implies causality, right? One variable causing other in maybe a sequence, or there should be a reason. Here we are just investigating relationships. It's not like just because of that this is happening. It's because maybe if it is high, this is more improved, or if it is not there, what are the disadvantages? So that's why we didn't use the word impact. And yes, you're right, the arrow shows impact. So it's just about the diagram, I guess.
My next question would be just if there is correlation, so what conclusions can we make? Basically, if you remember the paper on theoretical contribution, so what? Someone might ask, so, okay, there are correlations. What does it mean for practice? This is just for you to think. I wanted to, since I remember this, hypothesis 3, career expectations aspects create a relationship between personal commitment and resilience factors. What do you mean career expectations create a relationship? This is what?
So for example, let's say if I'm talking about a student who has a very high commitment with his, like what he expects in his expectations, and does it affect his resilience when he understands, or they working together in a pair? Like, is it like working together, or it's just one factor affecting the other or not affecting the other? So we just want to see the person, like as an individual, if commitment and resilience works together or not, or if it does it affect the attitudes and goals towards his career or not?
Attitudes and goals, how do you measure them?
So we have multiple questions. If you want, I can just so as you can see, these are some questions we designed for career goals. Like, for example, be creative and innovative in my work, or achieve secure employment, or run my own business. And attitudes, we have questions like opportunities for advancement in position, or variety of work, or good people to work with. Or for example,
and then you converge all these questions into one variable.
Yes, because we just didn't want to use expectation. It's a very broad term. A lot of people will not understand, and reliability will go way down. So we decide to, like make it more defined, so that you understand what is attitudes and what is goals. Because it's a very thin line between them. It could be very similar.
Neil, do you mean that for this set of questions for desire, work, attitudes, you have one variable from 1 to 5, which means something?
Yeah, so both of yes, exactly, they both work under career expectations. Like, what are your expectations towards your career? But those come under attitudes and goals. And then we are comparing them with resilience, which is personal. This is towards work. This is career things, career goals, or career attitudes. And resilience is commitment, is personal. It's like your own personal variable. So that's what we are trying to connect.
If you collect all these aspirations into one variable, which is going to be measured from 1 to 5, or just a sum, wouldn't it be like, I don't know, more motivated people and less motivated people, but there wouldn't be like one interested in job security, one interested in interesting job, and we cannot sum them up?
I actually, it's not about motivation, because as you can see, they are not just motivated. They are like, yes, there are some questions which are related to motivation, but in generalized way, if you talk, yes, if I pick up some specific questions from both of these sections, then yes, you can decide that there's one motivated, one not motivated.
Oh, okay, not motivated. One is more ambitious in
Yeah.
terms of career achievements. One is less ambitious.
Exactly. Yes. So that's what we are trying. Like, how high, if I'm ambitious about my expectations, then how does it my commitment work in this equation, or how my resilience is connected to this? If I have high resilience, does it work out with this equation or not? That's the hypothesis.
In this way, the construct that you use as work aspirations, maybe it's, or attitudes,
yeah,
like career goals and attitudes, like in this connotation, career goals and attitudes, you mean that you have like diverse attitudes that may change, but if we converge everything into one variable, it's like not about career goals or attitudes, more about, well, ambition or, well, result orientation, something like that.
We are using the word expectations. Maybe you are saying the word results is much better in terms of defining it. But like, yes, right now we're using the word expectation, but yes, we can think about it. You're right.
And like, I think what this variable would mean, for instance, one says, okay, I don't know, freedom is the most important aspiration for me, but someone says, I want freedom, I want money, I want interesting job.
Yes.
It's more about like a greedy person who wants everything.
Yes. Exactly.
In this case, the variable is means different, means something different, which you measure with these questions. And career goals and attitudes, these are two different constructs.
They are under expectation. They are supposed to be under one variable, but they are like together.
They are together. Like these questions that you showed.
Yeah, they are together. They are together in one construct, and then we have resilience separate and commitment separate. And these two are supposed to work together in coherence.
So you converge all together. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Please think how you could name this construct.
Yeah, we'll think about the nomenclature. Yeah, I think
I guess it's more about, well, this greedy nature of those who want everything. Okay. Like, but in general, okay, I see what you mean. Indeed, very interesting. Just well, be accurate with the terminology and visualizing the relationship, but up to now, well, no questions. Very good that you have collected so many data and you're able to come up with already some results.
Any other question?
How to discuss, think already how you're going to discuss these results. Okay, you got these correlations. What do they mean, like for practice or for scholars? This is the question that already for the next presentation, but you could already think since you have data. Okay, very good. Niken Botho, thank you very much for your presentation. Very nice that you have like very straightforward and clear conceptual model. Dear all those who are here with us, please pay attention that, well, the idea of the research is very, well, clear, absolutely clear. This is what we need to strive for. Okay, thank you. Let's move to the next presentation, the last presentation for today, and we're on time. This is very good. We have, let me see, Ahmar.
Okay, thank you for feedback.
Thank you. Good luck with your research. Good luck. Neil, you can now stop sharing the screen, and Ahmar, please. Ahmar, yes, I see.
Yeah, Professor, I'm here.
Great.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, please start.
Hello, everyone. So I'll be presenting examining uplift models for direct marketing in Qatar's B2B construction sector. My supervisor is Professor Elena Serova. Now, this brief introduction about the topic, because it is really close to me, this topic. It's observed that marketing activities that usually is done in the market has to be very personalized. And we understand that if it is directed to random individuals, it will end up in resulting in loss of revenue. Customer will churn, they will get bored of your marketing campaigns. And when we talk about marketing strategy in B2B sector, what happens is that the institutional buyers really differs from the buyer that are there in the consumer dominant markets. So for example, in B2C market, it is governed by the relatively small number of buyers that are available in a company, and they make a lot of purchases. They make high volume purchases, and the direct nature and complexity of this purchase, it leads to the existing of close relationship between the buyers and supplier. Next is Professor, because you've asked me to include the literature review of a brief of it. So this is the basic idea of my literature review, wherein I have divided my literature review in 3 parts. We'll talk about construction market, the role of relevant marketing in competitive economies, and also the type of models that can be deployed that would be useful for marketing in these kind of markets. What we understand from the construction market from Qatar is that it is facing persistent cost pressure because of tight public budgets, and it is in dire need of digital technologies that can enable better collaboration and also shift towards more data-driven decision making. And the core function of any direct marketing is to actually generate a response and influence the behavior of the target audience rather than just targeting a treated group. So what happens is that study has shown that 94% of consumers will discontinue the relationship with brand because of irrelevant marketing. And what happens is that in tight economies, the construction sector, the cost becomes prime important. It is the same for the supplies as well. And this almost forces the marketing professional to, understand the relationship between data and how it can be used to successfully design the marketing campaigns. We'll talk about different marketing models because the competition between suppliers are increasing, and the customer prefers to go with the service providers or a supplier who provides custom-made solution, who provides not irrelevant material to the buyers. When we talk about the models, the traditional models usually predicts a response in a binary outcome, whether a person will buy or not buy, and you only work with the treatment group. You build the model, and based on the treatment, you target your marketing campaign, wherein you try to get the response. But in the uplift modeling, what happens is that you divide the customer into 4 groups. So here's the uplift model. What happens is that instead of dividing the customers into 2 segments like traditional predictive models, the uplift model improves the targeting by focusing on customers who are only in persuadables. So for example, in traditional models, you can only differentiate between people who will buy and people who will not buy. So people who will not buy is represented here by lost cause. And if you apply uplift modeling, you will end up only targeting persuadables, which will result in greater return on marketing investment. Okay, so where is the research gap? One research gap that is very obvious is that construction sector remains one of the most underdeveloped industry when it comes to studying marketing strategies. There's not a lot of articles specific for this sector. Also, the buyers have different tendencies to operate in this market compared to the consumer market. Most of the research that was done for the model for this uplift modeling was for model development, is mostly related to computer science and information technology. But I would like to research why uplift model would be the better suit for these markets. And no research has explored the effect of irrelevant marketing with primary data. So everyone has used the data that is either a synthetic data or the data that was already collected. Research question, like stated above, is why is uplift modeling better solution in direct marketing? And also, what is the role of age-relevant marketing on brand perception and buying decisions? These are three hypotheses. What it states that irrelevant marketing creates negative brand perception and then reduces the chance for buyers to take up your product. Marketing campaign, if you target everybody in the market based on the traditional models, you will have loss of ROMI. And also focusing on brand loyalty is very important, and what kind of service you provide to the customers rather than just running a marketing campaign. Research justification, I'm going to do quantitative research because it is traditionally, causal relationship is traditionally examined in quantitative type of research. Data collection, what I have done is I have used a previously developed questionnaire and just modified it to the market that I am trying to capture. Questionnaire has been sent to 15 companies, out of which almost 11 now the data has been received at around 50 respondents. These are all buyers from medium to large scale enterprises who are able to make a buying decision. The questionnaire was distributed via email link, and the reason for the survey and brief overview of the research was provided along with the research questions. So this is data collection questionnaire. It includes, it is divided into 3 parts. What will be used as my construct, like demographic, what influences buying decision of an individual, particularly in this segment, also the effect of relevant and irrelevant marketing campaign. The last 2 part of this is 5-point Likert scale has been used for this. This is some examples of the questions that were used that are used in the questionnaire. So one question like, how likely are you to take up a product from a relevant marketing campaign if you are looking to buy, and comparison to if you're not looking to buy. So you have to select in 5-point Likert scale. Okay, so this is optimization of construct, wherein the whole construct is divided into, like in questionnaire, in demographic, what influences, these are my dependent variables, what influences buying decisions, and impact of relevant and irrelevant marketing campaigns. For example, what influences your buying decision is a question is what is most important. So there are like 5 options given. The only question that is not on Likert scale in the questionnaire is this question, is where what influences your buying decision. So for example, brand perception, family and friends, cost, something like that. And about impact of relevant and irrelevant marketing, mistargeted campaign, as in you're looking to end a relationship with your existing suppliers and somebody contacted you, something like that. What is the likelihood of you ending your relationship with the supplier? And then based on these Likert scale questions, we will analyze the data. I have not really, I can really do it on R also, because it's some simple mean and standard deviation would be used for this. We'll interpret the result on 5-point, or the mean on 5-point Likert scale, and based on the interpretation, we'll confirm or reject our hypothesis for deploying the uplift modeling or not. Thank you very much.
Ahmar, thank you. It seems like I wrote in the chat that your topic is not related to the conceptual model and methodology. Your topic is about uplift model, but in your conceptual model and constructs, you're not talking about the uplift model.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these data, and when you draw a discussion and conclusion result, we are going to create a theme. So for example, a mean for brand perception is the highest, or mean for cost analysis is the highest. So we have to understand that you don't have to contact everybody with your marketing campaigns, right? You can only contact if you develop an uplift model wherein you will have a response-based model, wherein you have a model which is divided into 4 parts and you're only targeting the persuadables. This will be beneficial for this market.
Ahmar, I see what you mean in the discussion section. Of course, you can do that, but the content of your work conceptually is about, well, these particular things that you presented about impact of relevant, irrelevant marketing and different decisions that influence buying decisions. So I think, well, I'm sure that this should be in the topic of your midterm paper, this particular thing, because right now it sounds, and my comments were related to that, examining uplift modeling for direct marketing, but it's not about that. It's like an addition in the end. Here you are talking about what impacts buying decisions and the impact of relevant, irrelevant marketing campaigns and other things. Double check with your supervisor about, well, having this content and not relevant topic. I guess you still have time to change the topic, because, well, it sounds differently. Could you show me your research questions? They were also different as far as I remember. Or they were related to topic and hypotheses were related to this content and conceptual model.
Here. Can you see my screen?
Operationalization of constructs, I can see.
Okay, just one
Slide
second.
11.
Just 1 second. Okay, so
the survey, yes. Could you show your research questions?
Yeah.
Right now, I can see your uplift model survey, the questionnaire itself. But could you show your research questions in presentation?
Okay.
Ahmar, are you having, no, everything fine? Okay, great. Research questions. Why is uplift modeling a better solution? What is the role of relevant marketing on brand perception? I guess, well, you are talking about the second research question, and the first one, you do not tackle it in your empirical research. If you do not tackle it in your empirical research, you cannot, well, basically reply to it. You do not have, well, data in order to support any results. That's why I propose that you focus on the second research question and then just check the consistency between this research question. Then hypothesis, could you please go to your hypothesis? The next slide. Creates negative brand perception, reduces the chances of buyers taking up the product. Brand perception creates negative brand perception. We need to formulate here as negatively impacts or has negative impact on brand perception, and then a negative impact on chances of buyers taking up the product. This is more about purchase decisions. Please think about the terminology in the first hypothesis. The second hypothesis, not clear for me. Marketing campaigns targeted to anyone apart from persuadable result in loss of return on marketing investments. These are company-oriented hypotheses, but you are getting the data from consumers, right?
I'm getting the, no, these are the buyers from a company. So they're buying for an organization.
Okay, but you are asking individual business representatives, right?
I'm asking the buyers from the different companies, yes.
Yes, so, but the hypothesis is designed for, well, companies. You are talking about marketing campaigns targeted, and then in this formulation, you cannot use your data that you ask, well, these business representatives from these companies. It should be reformulated, and I do not know what you specifically mean, but it is different, like irrelevant marketing campaigns, make them, well, negatively impact their brand perception. And thus, I assume that you could make the well, conclusion from the second hypothesis that yes, indeed, marketing campaigns targeted at irrelevant people would be ineffective. This is basically what you're saying. But this is like our conclusion out of the initial hypothesis. So second hypothesis, you need to reformulate. Focusing on brand loyalty by maintaining good services influences the buying decision more than marketing campaigns. But do you measure brand loyalty?
Yeah, there is a question. There are two questions.
Okay. Focusing on brand loyalty. It's also from the company side. A company could focus on brand loyalty or on marketing campaigns, and they both impact the buying decision. And then you compare this one and this one from company side. But you need to go back to the consumer, and we're talking here about consumer perception. So consumer perception of relevant marketing campaigns and their loyalty. What has more impact on their buying decision? This is what you are doing right now. Like, that's the point, not from the company side.
Yeah, okay.
You see?
I'll reformulate it, yes, sure.
So we are talking here about consumer-related factors, their perception, their buying decision, their perception of marketing campaigns, whether it works or not. So focus on consumers. In B2B sector, well, doesn't matter, right? He or she, as CEO, could look at the, well, targeted marketing campaign and decide to switch to this particular business partner, right? So still we're talking about consumers, but in B2B. Your literature review is related towards uplift model, but not to the content of consumers' perceptions and relationships. So I guess your literature review was related to the initial, to the topic and your research questions, but not to your conceptual model here.
Well, there is 3 parts in that. So there is relevant marketing in competitive economy.
Yes, I guess this part should be the most important one. Qatar's construction market is just a context for you, so it's of less importance. And prediction models and uplift models in your methodology section, you're not talking about that in the empirical research. So this gray block should be expanded, and this is the most important. And you need to say, okay, relevant marketing campaigns, what's the impact? Loyalty, what's the impact? Buying decisions, what's the impact? What are the antecedents of that? So that should be the content of your literature review. Okay. also scales that you use to measure your constructs. I'm not sure that these, like there was something, if you had to choose, if you choose this one, is it okay or not? And then 5 Likert scale. Is it the scales that you developed on your own?
No, it is used from the previous studies.
Please, well, cite these references and separately indicate, okay, loyalty, I measure as this, buying decision, I measure as this, so that there is no like speculation about whether you have come up with these questions or their own questions. And the final comment about the sample, you have only 41 respondents, right? You're waiting to get more. What's the size you're getting at?
I am around 80.
Around 80, okay. Yes. Is it enough for?
Well, I discussed with the professor and she said around 80 to 100 should be enough.
80 to 100. Okay. Ahmar, I would also ask you to consult with your supervisor on the topic, on the content, because empirically you have different, it's inconsistent. We need them to be consistent. When the person reads your topic and your research questions, he needs to already, like I did with your papers, like assume, predict what are possible research designs, what's going to be inside. Up to now, we have different things, and the words, terminology that you use in your midterm paper, like really important. You need to stress them and use them throughout the whole of your research. Okay. Great. Thank you, Ahmar, for your presentation. Thank you to everyone for your presentations today, especially to those who are gonna present next time. I see Khan, I see Darren, very nice that you're here. I see Dalapo, right? Ikachupu, you're with us. Okay. Dear all, let me stop the recording.